Yeah.
You know?
When, in terms of morals, do you think things did start taking a dip as far as our generation? I mean, was it the Attitude Era with WWE? Was it before that? How do you see it?
I think it probably really started off with the Attitude Era, because before that it was all pretty much comic book, you know, it was superhero stuff for the children. And obviously, as you said, maybe even sort of with Paul Heyman with ECW started off. And, yeah, that was a real niche because again it was something different, and it caught a niche into the young, you know, like it probably all started off with the grunge movement as well in music, because it's all sort of like tied around that era. You know, people want that little bit more, I don't know, risque stuff, one is a better word, you know. And obviously, as I said, WWE took it off with the Attitude campaign. So I'd probably say it started off with ECW, which probably, again, had its roots in normal wrestling, but it's thought, well, hang on, we can get more of a reaction by just upping the intensity a bit. And obviously you got the, you know, the likes of New Jack in, you know, and obviously Terry Funk came in, which, you know, he was always mad bad anyway, but, you know, loved him. But yeah, I think it probably started off, you know, initially with ECW and the Attitude campaign, which again, you know, it concentrated on an older audience because they were trying to get away from the kids after spending many years enticing the kids to buy their merchandise and watch their programming. All of a sudden they've changed it, so that rather than sort of, yes, you were going to get a new audience, but you're also going to get this older, the younger audience, which are also going to be exposed to slightly more adult.
It was the rise of the anti-hero, wasn't it, as well? Like, you know,
totally.
Steve Austin. You know, you can. It's weird when you look back at things that changed wrestling. I think you've always got to look back at the match between Austin and Bret Hart, and how that was Bret Hart had really done everything by the book. That was the first time, really, when he never really turned heel. No. Bret Hart, you know.
It was more of a change in the.
It was a change in the because actually, and you know, and also. It's interesting. There's a film called Bigger, Stronger, Faster, Bigger, Faster, Stronger, The Side Effect of Being American. Yeah. Very, very good film about anabolic steroids, actually. And it directly links into wrestling and Rocky and Hogan and all these people who were pushed as the American hero. And then it turned out they were being caught with some sort of drugs, and that they were not imposters because, you know, but they weren't. It wasn't just saying your prayers and taking your vitamins, you know, unless your doctor's got a really dodgy prescription method. So what happens is you sort of look at this and you go, well, hold on a second, that's a little bit. So you realise that your heroes were liars. So actually, what's next are the people who, well, you know, he might not be a nice person, but at least he's honest, you know. And that was a rise of the anti-hero. And it wasn't just wrestling. I mean, I remember seeing, I think it was Ransom. No, it wasn't Ransom. I think Payback with Mel Gibson. And he played a real anti-hero type character. And it was one of his better roles, a lot of people thought. And it's that I think it was just wrestling reflecting society in a lot of ways.
Just became jaded about, you know, life wasn't all, you know, sweetness and light anymore. It was a very dark society.
Do you think it went from maybe, you know, in the Hogan era where it was like, you know, cheer the good guys, boo the bad guys? Do you think it went to cheer the strong, boo the weak? I mean, I'm thinking of, say, The Rock. You know, he used to do he used to do promos where he would basically bully the little interview guy, Michael Cole or whoever it was.
Yeah.
Do you think that's the shift that we went through?
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense because, in all fairness, I mean, you know, it might be controversial, but I've never swayed away from that in the past. But America was very, its propaganda was a lot more direct. Not, I wouldn't say, you know, you look at the Rocky movies and it's always, you know, it's always that America's gonna, you know, it's the strong one. America saves the day. America, and then with what's happening, even in TNA now, you know, it's it's something I'd suggested to a couple of people in TNA. That the British invasion was a little bit stereotypically, you know, it was old when Regal did it, and it needed. I said if I was doing that, I would have the guy say, look, you didn't win the War of Independence. We left your country because we saw the state it was in, and you people were a complete sham. And now look at you, without us guiding you, you're the most hated nation in the world. And I saw Bashir's promo. I was like, man, that's some divisive, strong stuff. But what he was saying is, you're all brainwashed. You're the bully. You know, you're chanting USA, but you're the bullies of the world. You killed my countrymen in Afghanistan, and George Bush says mission accomplished. And it was really strong. And they're going for the more reality. But that's why I think the whole thing with Gesture and Kurt Angle, and my honest opinion is that it's a huge work. And people said, oh, but you know, there's Angle's got done for this legally with the thing with Raka Khan. It's like, listen, that man is so committed to his art. I told Kurt Angle, I took him to one side on a TNA tour, and I just said, I wanted to say, man, like, I think he's one of the two greatest. He's arguably the greatest wrestler of all time because he has legitimate credentials and he's won a gold medal. But I would say him and Michaels were, you know, the two top. And that guy's so committed to it that I think if this whole thing is an angle, him even getting arrested or whatever would be part of that commitment to it, because
part of the story.
It's part of the story. Like, you know, it's not like he's not been arrested for stuff before. So my take is on it, if you're going to do something, you're going to do it really well, right? So yeah, I think what's happened is that TNA, went off on a tangent there, but TNA are going for this more direct route of saying, you know, America is this now, and, you know, doing that with the invasion gimmick. And I think what's happening is Steve Austin just reflected that view of, you know, that view of he's the tough guy, we don't care anymore, we're not going to sugarcoat it, like, you know, and I think that's what you're saying is right. I think it is boo the weak and, you know, cheer the strong.
Without that, I mean, obviously Vince as well, he scored a goal with the beat your boss up, because again it struck a chord. Yeah. Everyone hates their boss, and, you know, and everyone can realise what, you know, hitting their own boss or beating them up through Austin.
But I feel again, that's kind of a moral thing, right? Because, you know, we're saying if you don't like someone, beat them up.
It is. Again, you know, there are, you've got to look at it different ways. You know, there are different levels, because again, you can't go ultra righteous and self-righteous where you're going to live in a Mary Whitehouse society. You know, in the end of the day, we're all adults. You know, and even society has evolved. You know, not just wrestling, but the whole society has evolved. So, you know, we can't be puritanical anymore. But again, it's having that suspension of reality. And I always remember one of the promoters said to me that when people go to a wrestling show, no one cares who they are. They can go in there, they can scream, they can shout, they can get all the frustrations out of the day, and no one's going to take a blind bit of notice. If they'd done it on the street, they'd get arrested.
True. Particularly in a recession.
Exactly.
You know, particularly in a recession where people are frustrated. There's more need for heat. There's more need for an outlet for people to vent. Yeah. You know, like you just look at the newspapers today. You know, you look at the front page of any newspaper. If you want to really not depress yourself, but realise the state we're in, go to a service station, look at all the newspaper headlines in one day, and you'll see war, and you'll see all this stuff, and then you'll see like Jordan and Peter Andre. And I genuinely believe a lot of stories you see in the paper is just so, you know, because I know sleaze sells or whatever, but a lot of it, you read this stuff and it's to just kill your faith in human beings. You know, there is a lot of stuff that you read the paper, you're just going, man, the world, it's just terrible. And I think wrestling gives people that outlet, because particularly in England, where we are a nation of moaners, you know, like wrestling could be, you know, that's why a lot of old people went to go see wrestling. I think it was like, you know, they like their favourites and they could hit the villains with it. You know, I'm not saying we go back to that, but I also think when we start going back to not, you can still have exciting wrestling, but something with a bit of structure. This is what we need to remember. Britain is famous for its structure. Britain is famous for queuing, right? You ask anyone, British people know how to queue. And what is queue? It's the most ridiculously organised, pointless structure, right, to get from point A to point B. That is Britain, right? And if you don't have structure in your wrestling, then it's Americanised to the point that the British people go, it's like that's why people used to go, our stuff was real. What? But, you know, because there is that pride. Look at the pads. You know, long pads and corner buckle. You know, so it's a hybrid of the two. But I do think we need to find that identity.
I think it's something I've noticed. I'm sure you've noticed over the years as well, Flash, and yourself, Alex. If you work on a show in front of an older audience, especially a British audience, the older people expect something from them. They expect a certain order to the wrestling. They expect the referee to take control. Yeah. Whereas the fans,
it confuses them when it's not there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They expect it because they grew up on that kind of wrestling as well, but also they expect, you know, the authority figure to do their job as they would.
Do you get that a lot where people say to you, why didn't you, you know, because they're still...
When you're doing the shows, the older audience, the British style shows, you get the fans, they really get on you because they expect you to do your job, whereas the fans of the American stuff are just like, well, that's what goes on, you know.
You're just an extra person in there.
Yeah,
it's like, say, with the
British wrestling fans expect the authority figure to do their job, and just in life in general, you know, they expect that person to be there for them.